Well, good morning, and a pleasant good Monday morning to each and every one of you. Hope you stayed warm over the weekend and hope you had a great weekend. Starting to kind of get back into post holiday, completely all in, right? Completely all in. We welcome you to Dialed In. I'm Tom Brenneman, normally joined by Luke Brenneman, but he had to restart the new semester. And for the life of me, I have never understood why so many colleges and universities across the country, and it's the overwhelming majority of them. Okay. I've done a lot of research on this because my wife and I have two kids that are in college, and thank God they love where they are and they were able to go where they went and all those kinds of things. So, hey, no doubt about it. But whether they're private or public, most of them subscribe to this curriculum of where they demand you take these, sort of liberal arts sort of things or whatever it might be inside of whatever major you have. Okay. And we've all heard these stories, right? Electives. They're not electives because you got to take them for your major. And I'm not going to go into a whole, lengthy discussion here today. But you take Syracuse as an example. That was a school we visited. Luke was considering going there, but they have a great broadcast school and it's a great university. They are one of the few schools in the country that does not subscribe to this curriculum, okay? Which means you only take classes for your major. So what's a result of that? They have more double majors at Syracuse University than any college in the United States. So that means, okay, a kid has a better chance to find a job if he has two different majors and not just one. Because you spent so much time in one taking these ridiculous classes that don't mean anything in your life, ever. And so he's got that going on. So we're going to have to figure out a different day on instead of Monday because he's locked into this class. They only offer it, gives you an idea. They only offer it at 9:00 in the morning. That's it. And so that's when we have our show. But we are joined by Casey McAllister. Casey, I digress. I apologize. Good morning to you. It just gets me so fired up when I hear that my wife and I are paying for our son to take classes about Greek or Latin sports. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I would be pretty frustrated too. I never understood the gen eds for college. I don't get it. I don't really understand the point of it. It's just honestly a money grab. It's a squeeze.
Yep.
I won't get
Yep.
into it either, but it's lame, very lame.
It
But we'll
really
figure it
is.
out.
You hit the nail on the head. It's a money grab because, look, they're going to get our money no matter what. Okay, because you're hoping that your kid can go there and graduate in 4 years. I wasn't able to. I was too busy hanging out, having fun. And I didn't get my degree till 25 years after I left college because I had a job, time to go to work, make some money. But this stuff, some of these classes that he has taken, I just can. I'm beside myself thinking that I'm sending a check for $25,000 or $30,000 a year for him to take these classes instead of ones which would help prepare him for life after college. Anyway, okay. Our show is presented, as you know, by UDF and Encore Technologies. Right now, we're still coming your way twice a week. Mondays at 9. We'll post later in the day on the Believe Network, and then our second show is still high noon on Thursday. You can find us on YouTube, the Chatterbox Sports page. Thousands of you in the chat already. You can download us anywhere, anytime. Just search Dialed In with Tom Brenneman, and you're dialed in. Well, look, we said it on Thursday that if you're a football fan, and we know each and every one of you is, each and every one of us is, that for 5 days we had a chance to experience football nirvana. College football playoff games, Thursday and Friday. NFL playoff games, Saturday, Sunday, then again tonight. The college boys lived up to all the hype. You couldn't possibly ask for two better games. In the Orange Bowl, Penn State jumps out early, big lead, looked like they were on the verge of blowing Notre Dame out, but the luck of the Irish. But let's be honest about it, it wasn't luck. Notre Dame had the better coach. Notre Dame had the better team. They rally from 10-0 down. They get that key field goal. Man, it's amazing how momentum can change. And we'll talk about this in a minute. But the quarterback gets hurt, goes in the tent. Notre Dame's got the ball the final 2 minutes of the first half. The backup quarterback comes in. Bang, 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 bang. They kick a field goal. They had been shut out to that point. They get the ball to start the second half. Quarterback, Riley Leonard, comes back in. Down the field they go, 10-10. They go on to win 27-24. Wild fourth quarter. Then there's Ohio State. The Buckeyes look like they would boat race Texas early on. They go down the field, the opening drive. I mean, boom, boom, boom. Not even nothing. Don't even blink an eye. And here they go down the field for the second drive. And in a rare case, Travion Henderson, probably the single most disciplined kid on the field and off the field at at Ohio State. He gets a personal foul penalty. And it changed everything. And then it became penalty after penalty that allowed a team like Texas to stay in the game, and you can't do that. Next thing you know, it's 14-14. We go to the fourth. Buckeyes quarterback Will Howard, 13 plays, 88 drives, nearly 8 minutes for an 8-point lead. Quinn Ewers right down the field, gets it to first and goal at the 1. And remember now, Ohio State had the number 1 first and goal defense in the country this year. They had goal line stands all the time in the biggest moments. Penn State, Oregon, among others. And, of course, what does Texas do? Now, I got to tell you, I get tired of hearing Kirk Herbstreit and all these guys raving on and on about Steve Sarkisian. I got to be honest with you. This is Texas, man. This is Texas. And it's first and goal at the 1. And what are you doing on first down? You're throwing the ball on the 1-yard line. Incomplete. Second down. No, let's don't run it up the middle. No. Let's pitch it left to the short side of the field. You lose 7. Third down. Incomplete. Then came fourth down. One of the great plays in the history of Ohio State football. Jack Sawyer, Mr. Columbus, Ohio himself from Pickerington. A sack and a scoop, goes 83 yards for a touchdown, seals a deal. Ohio State wins at 28-14. So, Ohio State and Notre Dame, 2 of the most prestigious historical franchise in college football franchises. Title game a week from tonight. We'll talk about both games and a preview of the final coming up shortly. As for the NFL, the ratings will be huge. We know that. But except for the late game last night, I got to tell you, the game stunk. They were terrible. In fact, they were almost unwatchable. You start with Justin Herbert. He proves yet again, this is not the guy you want under center in the big game. Still never won a playoff game. 4 interceptions. Texans look pretty good. After a slow start, they look pretty good. It's going to be an interesting game, the Texans in Kansas City. We'll get to that a little bit later. But 4 interceptions. The Texans rout the Chargers early game Saturday. Worse than that, the Steelers' performance on Saturday night. I alluded to Kirk Herbstreit. Man, how about his gig? That's a pretty good gig. He's doing the Ohio State game on Friday night, and then he's flying to do the Pittsburgh-Baltimore game on Prime Saturday night. It's a good gig. Good gig. But you know it's bad when he says on the air, where the hell is the fight? Referring to the Steelers. I mean, you know it's bad. The whole Mike Tomlin thing. We'll talk about this today. As great as he's been, and there's no doubt he's been a great head coach of the Steelers. But is it time to move on? I mean, seriously, is it time to move on? He's not won a postseason game since 2016. Not one. We watched this happen with the Bengals. And I am not in no form or fashion comparing Marvin Lewis to Mike Tomlin. But you can only go so long where you don't win postseason games. Marvin had no problems getting his team into the playoffs. But after that debacle that happened against the Steelers in that playoff game, they stayed with Marvin for 3 more years, losing record every year. I just can't see how the Steelers do it. Then on to Sunday, the Bills annihilate Denver They'll host the Ravens in Buffalo next weekend. I'd say it's hard to get on Bo Nix. This kid had an outstanding rookie year. They went from an awful team to a playoff team in 1 year. Speaking of quarterbacks who didn't show up, Jordan Love, wake-up call. Hello. Call for Jordan Love. Where was that guy? And I tell you, his body language is awful. I don't know if he was hurt, which he has been hurt. But I tell you, watching the playoffs this weekend more and more made me appreciate more and more Joe Burrow. Burrow's body language is incredible. Yeah, he gets chapped. He gets pissed like everybody else. He gets disappointed. But you don't see it. He's a leader. He's there. And man, he's never going to lay an egg, ever. He may not play great. And there are games he will admit himself he should play better. Games where if he played better, they'd win. There's no doubt. And the Bengals weren't a playoff team. Jordan Love got his team to the playoffs. Herbert got his team to the playoffs. Congratulations to them. But Love, he's walking around like he's defeated the very first series. They fumble the opening kickoff, Philadelphia touchdown. Then here they go, 3 and out. And after his 2 incompletes, he's walking to the sideline like a 14-year-old, like a 10-year-old. Meanwhile, Jalen Hurts, he returns from injury, didn't have to do a lot. In fact, didn't do a lot, but he was efficient. Threw 2 touchdowns without a turnover. Very boring, very methodical, a win. Then the nightcap, best game by far of the weekend, Washington to Tampa Bay. Really 2 easy teams to root for. You have great stories in Baker Mayfield and Jaden Daniels. Daniels has brought back memories of the whole RG3 thing. For those of you old enough, it was unbelievable then. It's unbelievable now in the nation's capital. Both players are gamers. Both of them. Total gamers. Teams went back and forth all night long. Then Zane Gonzalez. We're going to talk about this guy in a minute because I was doing a little research on him this morning. He's been out of the league for 3 years. 3 years. He boots 3 field goals in the game, including a 52-yarder, and then the game-winning field goal that hits the upright and then goes through in a Washington win. All right, Casey, let's get to the graphic. Let's look ahead to who's playing in the next round, who's playing who, where, when, all that stuff. Okay, so you're going to have, as an early game, this graphic won't tell you, but I'll tell you. And why are we doing anything from the Washington Post? So in the division, that's going to be the Kansas City game is going to be the early game on Saturday. So that's going to be a 4:30 in the afternoon game. I believe the nightcap is going to be the Commanders and the Lions. Is that right, Casey, on Saturday night?
January 18th at 8 p.m.
That's a Lions game, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then on Sunday, you'll have the early game, the Eagles against the winner of tonight's game, the Rams or the Vikings, and that will be in Philadelphia. And then, of course, you have the Bills and the Ravens. The game, by the way, tonight, they're playing that game in Phoenix because of the just horrific fires in California. And our thoughts and prayers are to all out there. People, their pets, animals. I mean, it's just, it's unbelievable. And I mean, I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat. It makes absolutely no difference whatsoever. And many of the most ardent, hardcore liberals have come out and agreed with the statement. So I'm not saying anything that anybody doesn't know here. If there is ever an example of government in a total failure and letdown to its population, it is mind-boggling the crap that is going on here in this deal. With cutting the fire department, taxpayers voting to have the catch the runoff from the mountains in Northern California so that there's enough water that you catch to have. They ran out of water in their fire hydrants. And this is all on government. Don't believe the BS. This is just, I get so angry. There are basic things. And they were more worried about other things that don't mean a damn thing. All right. And I know people out there who have lost houses. I know a couple of them, their houses gone, their lives gone. I mean, it's just unacceptable what has happened out there in California. Okay, we talked about the game tonight that's going to be in Phoenix. Our prayers go to all. And lastly, college basketball. Xavier gets a much-needed win at DePaul over the weekend. The Muskies will host Villanova tomorrow night at 6:30. Villanova just beat UConn. So they're playing pretty well. And the Muskies have always had trouble with Villanova, but who knows? They're at home. But then there's UC. And look, I've been their biggest fan. I've been a fan for a long, long time. I used to broadcast their games. I've been a big Wes Miller guy, but I tell you, it's getting old. It's getting really old. Will they ever win again? Remember the excitement in these parts after the first 2 months of the season? You're ranked in the top 15. You're rolling. Well, after Saturday's debacle against Kansas, the Bearcats remain winless in the Big 12, now 0-4. Think about this for a second. If I were to just show you these two stats, okay, you'd say no chance, right? Kansas shoots 35% from the field. They shoot 9%, 9. That's a single digit, 9. 2 for 21 from three-point land. And win by 15. 15, by the way. The point total in the second half for the Bearcats, 15. They were at 25-24 at halftime and scored 15 points total in the second half. And 9 of the 15 were miracle threes. I just cannot believe what I'm watching. I know the Big 12 is good. It's not that good, where UC should be 0-4, or maybe UC's not any good. I don't know. Maybe I was wrong. I mean, when Lukosius and Jizzle James combined to make 2 field goals in like 60 minutes of playing time, well, Skillings only shoots 7 times in the whole game. I mean, the way the rest of the team, and Bandego does not score at all. Not one time. Guy's 7 feet tall, and he can't score 1 basket in 25 minutes of play. I don't know. Their offense is brutal. Defense is good, and their season's not lost. I do want to say that, because I looked at the schedule last night. The season is not lost by any means. They've got games coming up, including Wednesday night at Colorado, where they have a chance to get things going. But we'll see. Wes keeps talking after every single game about, the effort and how hard his team's playing and all that sort of nonsense. I'm tired of hearing it. I'm really tired of hearing it. Just go out there and win a game, right? Just go out there and win a game. All right, Casey, let's start with, Let's start with the college football playoffs, since those games were played most recently. You thought and you were rooting for Penn State, though you said you wouldn't be disappointed if Notre Dame won the game. Let's start with that game, because I really believe that game changed when Penn State's up 10-0. They're going down the field, and they get stopped. Notre Dame gets the ball back, but their backup quarterback has to come into the game because Riley Leonard, they think, has a concussion. He's wobbling around. And next thing you know, the backup quarterback starts slinging it around, and they go down and get 3 points before halftime. I thought that's what changed the game. What was your overall thought on that game?
Yeah, I had some similar opinions on that as well. I mean, the fact that they kind of got a little bit of life there at the end gave them the momentum they needed coming out of the half to go and score and tie it up. And my biggest takeaway from the game was just Drew Allar. I'm tired of people hyping the guy up. I know I was one of the guys that said that I would rather have Allar over Riley Leonard. I'm sorry. I was not familiar with Leonard's game, apparently. It doesn't take much to beat Allar. He's very I understand that he has no weapons, but that interception that late in the game, Tom, I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing? Why are you making a throw that's across your body, across the field? Those are 2 double negatives in terms of quarterback play, and you just completely give up any chance that you had of winning the ball game, or giving yourself a chance to at least go down and try to win it. I mean, it it was a very good game. It played out exactly how I thought it would. Maybe a little higher scoring
Yeah.
than I thought. Lots of running. Although Notre Dame couldn't really get the ground game going till late in that game. Yeah, I mean it was good. It was a good game. I just thought that there at the end, Drew Alar, I'm tired of the guy being hyped up. He's just not that good right now.
Well, you're going to
Um,
watch him all next year again because he's not
I
going
know.
anywhere.
I know. He's going to be one of the top prospects, too. Everyone's going to hype him up. If they don't get weapons around him, I don't think he's going to do very well. And I think that can be said for a lot of these quarterbacks around the league in college football that they've hyped up. Like, Carson Beck didn't really have a ton of weapons to throw to. And now he's going to Miami. Quinn Ewers, I don't know what's going on with him either. He didn't look that great
Well,
this
in fairness
weekend.
to Ewers, he had a couple of his receivers that were hurt. I mean, he had some guys that were out. Their best receiver, leaves right in the middle of the game. So, I mean, in fairness to Ewers, I'm not going to get on him. I thought Ewers, and I know we're drifting into the Ohio State Texas game a little bit here, but to tie a ribbon on what you were saying there, Casey, and we'll get to Ohio State Texas.
Yeah, the main takeaway I had was you had a chance to go down, make a name for yourself, prove yourself in Penn State fashion, just fumbled the ball away. Happy that Notre Dame's in. That's my other team. So we'll talk more about the finals in a preview, probably on Thursday or something like that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Ohio State and Texas because that game was a lot of fun. If you're an Ohio State fan, which the main thing I have to say about that game, Tom, Jack Sawyer is a prime prospect for the Bengals. Team captain. You need edge rush help. He's 6'5", 265, and perfect replacement for Sam Hubbard. If that guy is not in stripes by the time they get to pick 17, I don't know what they're doing. If he's not there at 17, that's a shame because that dude is fit for Cincinnati.
Well, he's an interesting story, and of course, there's been a lot written about him since that scoop and score 83-yard touchdown that sealed the guy. He grew up in Pickerington, about 20 minutes from the Ohio State campus. Always an Ohio State fan. Blah blah blah. He was the highest rated defensive lineman in the country coming out of high school, anywhere in the country, right? And he goes to Ohio State. Huge disappointment as a freshman, a sophomore. They bring in a new defensive coordinator in Jim Knowles. Knowles wants to try him because he's such a great athlete. When you see him in person, you can't. That's why I say the television really never does justice. In some cases, Sawyer would be the prime example. And Luke talked about this when he was on the field for Ohio State and Indiana early in the year. Sawyer is a monster. You just gave, 270, 265, but he's 6'5". And we saw the way this guy can run. He is an unbelievable athlete. But really, it was only about midway through last year when he took off and started living up to some of the hype. This year, he's been fantastic all year long. I don't know if I would consider him to be a great pass rusher at the next level. We'll see about that. But for right now, there's plenty of time to worry about what the Bengals are going to do. And by the way, we got to get to their coordinator situation today before the show's over, too. Look, anybody who thinks, and somebody in the chat, I'm not going to disagree with you when they got to be first and goal. They've been doing it a lot this year, talking about Texas and bringing in Arch Manning. Arch Manning would have been killed by Ohio State the other night if they would have brought him in. He would have been killed. Quinn Ewers is a gamer. That dude hung in there, took a beating. His team falls behind. He ties the game on a drive. Ohio State goes down the field, scores a touchdown, and here he comes with 4 minutes left in the game, right down the field to get it to the 1-yard line. I mean, what else do you want a quarterback to do? This guy got him all the way down to the 1-yard line against that Ohio State defense at nut-cutting time, as we say here on Dialed In. Arch Manning wasn't going to do that. Now, could you have put him in at the 1 yard line? Yes. I'm so tired, though. I'm so tired of, if you want to beat down Chip Kelly, and he's a prime example. Chip Kelly's a great play caller. The next day, he's the worst play caller. Okay, which is, of course, absurd, right? He's a great play caller and has been one in the history of college football for even pro game. He had a hell of a run in the pros at Philadelphia. He had a couple of 10-win seasons. But you can't sit there and criticize or blow him up or criticize or talk him up and then not do the same thing for Sarkisian. I mean, the announcers call him Sark. The dude's name is Sarkisian. They don't call Chip Kelly Kel, right? The dude's name is Sarkisian. And all they do is talk about how great this guy is. And look, he's done a nice job at Texas. But this is now 2 years in a row with an elite quarterback, a great defense, where he's got football playoff semis and he got beat. And I think you can make an argument that his play calling down at the 1 yard line with 2 minutes left in the game it's brutal.
Yeah, I mean, that's
brutal.
It's the difference in the game, Tom. I mean, they punch it in there at the 1 yard line. It's a 21 game, or it's a swing. You know what I mean? It's a completely different look, and who knows what happens there at the end. What's crazy, too, is if you're self-aware of who Texas is, you would know that they have some very highly touted offensive lineman prospects, and they've been getting beat all day in terms of
they've had guys hurt, in fairness. Now they've had some guys hurt. So you give them the benefit of the doubt on that because their starting right tackle was hurt. He played hurt. He had missed the last game. He came back. We're going to beat down the guys that are injured and playing because those guys are gamers. Well, I want those guys on my team.
Right, but what I'm saying is you would know that and we've had this conversation with Anthony Munoz. We've had it with other offensive lineman guys that have been on our show before. The best thing that you can do to help those guys out is establish a run game, establish them running downhill, get them going. And I know that they had trouble, but you got to keep going with it. You got to keep pushing forward, especially at the 1 yard line. Just punch it in. Those guys are good enough to get you that 1 yard. I don't care how good any defense is around the league. In college football and the NFL, you can get a yard, and it's been proven.
Yeah,
you can do it.
That's exactly right.
So I do have some problems with that, but it's one play. Like it all came down to. I hate to say that it didn't all come down to one play, but one play really swung the momentum. That fumble 6 was just too much to overcome.
Yeah. I mean, the pitch on second down is the one where you're just like, man, are we saying that we can't get 1 yard against this team? I know Ohio State has the number 1 ranked defense in the country. I understand that. But like you said, it's a yard. You're throwing on first down, and it's tight down there, man. You can't get any tighter than the 1 yard line. I mean, you got 11 yards to play with here, and you got players bunched up everywhere. And then second down, the pitch to the short side. And, of course, Caleb Downs makes an unbelievable play. Ransom makes an unbelievable play. I did not realize that Ohio State had played without Denzel Burke the entire second half. He's their best corner. And you got to figure out what's going on with him as far as the next round is concerned. But, look, the bottom line is Texas did a phenomenal job on the Ohio State wide receivers. They played – in a system where they were not going to get beat by Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka. Give credit to Ohio State and Will Howard especially for figuring out, okay, that's what they're going to do. We're going with Carnell Tate. We're going to throw some balls in the backfield. The play of the weekend was not the Sawyer play. The play of the weekend was the Travion Henderson play. Because as bad as Texas was getting kicked around, those Ohio State penalties prevented them from scoring. They should have scored 21 points the first 3 possessions of the game. But penalties kept them from doing so. And so, all of a sudden Texas ties a game. Crowd is totally into it. It's a Texas home game, that game. I mean, the announcers had said it was 70% Texas fans. And that's not because Ohio State doesn't travel well. That's because the game was played in Texas. So, but they tie the game, the momentum, the crowd. It's a minute left in the second half. You're thinking Ohio State's just going to run out the clock, go to the locker room, get the ball to start the second half, and then Travion Henderson. Just watching him, I don't know if there's a faster player in college football with the ball in his hands. There might be guys that run a faster 40, but with the ball in his hands, I don't know if there's a faster player in the game than Travion Henderson. When that guy takes off, and you heard Fowler, as soon as he caught it, he said, look out, home run ball might happen. And I mean, that dude, gone. 75-yard touchdown, total momentum swing, came back the other way. And the one kid, and I'm glad you pointed this out, Mark Fetters, the one kid who deserves so much credit and might be the Ohio State offensive most valuable player of this season is Donovan Jackson. He went into the season as an All-American potential left guard. They've lost two of their offensive linemen. The center of the year in college football, Ohio State has lost. And undoubtedly a first-round pick in the NFL draft, Ohio State has lost in their left tackle. This year, Donovan Jackson goes from left guard to left tackle. He has not allowed a single sack since the first game he played. He allowed one in the first game. He has not allowed a sack in 8 games since then. And when you look at this run through the college football playoff, who Ohio State and Notre Dame, who they've beaten to get here, these are without a doubt the two best teams. It's not even debatable. I mean, Notre Dame gets Indiana at home. Indiana had lost one game all year long, and you can beat up Indiana all you want. They lost one game to Ohio State. The only 2 games Indiana lost all year long were to Ohio State and Penn State. Okay? So, I mean, forgive me. Ohio State and Notre Dame. Forgive me. The 2 teams in the championship game. They beat Indiana. They beat Georgia, the champion of the SEC, right, to get into the final game. They beat a top 5 team in Penn State. Ohio State, toughest without a doubt. Tennessee, second, third best team in the SEC, right? Oregon, undefeated, ranked number 1. And then Texas played in the SEC championship game. Second year in a row, by the way, no SEC team in the championship game. Where's my man Reed Mouse? Where is he, Casey? All he told me forever and ever is the mighty SEC, how great they are. And this is second year in a row, not a Southeastern Conference team in the championship game.
Was not expecting you to pull out the Reed Mouse SEC lover. But yeah, I mean, that is pretty interesting when you put it like that. The one thing I will say about this college football playoff as a whole, and we'll get into the NFL as I kind of segue this conversation into that. It's truly got the 2 closest teams, I believe. The best teams were in the in the semifinals, in the finals. Texas and Ohio State were the 2 best rosters. Penn State, proven that they should be there. Notre Dame, they were able to beat the SEC champion. And like you said, they had to go through a tough Indiana team. They've proven themselves time and time again. These 2 teams deserve to be in the finals. I know that beginning of the college football playoff was not great, and I've got it right here. I've got it pulled up here. We got the games. And they were pretty much a snooze fest for the first round. But that's kind of what football is. And we've got the NFL playoffs here. If we just look at the games, there's only 1 or 2 good games yesterday, Tom, or just over the weekend.
There wasn't 2, Casey. There's exactly 1 the whole postseason so far. 1 last night.
And so I just feel like this level of the playoff format is the way to go. I know we had a lot of not disagreements with us and maybe other fans, but this is truly the best way to do it, I feel like. And I think the results speak for themselves. You didn't get any blowouts in the semifinals like in years past in the 4-team playoff that they've had in the years past. Now we'll see what the finals end up shaking out to be. I think it's going to be a close game. Notre Dame has played Ohio State in previous years pretty close. Right now, I believe the Ohio State is favored by 8 points. So that's not
Yeah.
looking great in terms of how the game is going to shake out. But it does make it feel like that college football, maybe they got it right. Maybe they did get it right in the 12-team playoff. At
Yeah.
least that's how I
And
feel.
you know what's amazing is, you're right, Casey. And you know what's amazing is, and somebody pointed this out in the chat, and they're exactly right, is that Ohio State would not have made the playoff. Notre Dame, I think, well, they'd have been right there on the cutting edge. Okay. Yep. They'd have been right there on the cutting edge because they lost one game all year long. It was a bad loss against Northern Illinois. Man, Marcus Freeman, what a job that cat's done as a head coach. And for Ryan Day, I mean, look, I've been one of his defenders. I've said all along they should never even consider firing this guy, regardless of the 4 straight losses to Michigan. But when you have your team play like they have these last 3 games, you're doing something right. A great point in the chat from Steve Ross said, look, Texas did take Jeremiah Smith out of the game. He said, and I would suspect that Notre Dame is going to use that same defensive scheme. You and I think the same way, Steve, but here's the issue, okay? Here's the issue. You have 9 days to get ready for the game. You're going to spend one of those days traveling. And you spent one of those days after the day just recouping, trying to get guys healthy. And Notre Dame took a lot of hits. 2 of their offensive linemen had to leave the game. Their starting left tackle, freshman, unbelievable player. He's not going to play in the championship game. They've already ruled him out with an injury. Here's a problem. That is a 180 from Notre Dame's normal scheme. Notre Dame is a man-to-man defensive team. Al Golden's a great defensive coordinator. We've been talking about him coming back to the Bengals. He left here to go to Notre Dame to be the D coordinator. Would he come back and take that job? But, look, to ask your defense to overhaul your philosophy, your scheme as a team, going back to when you were playing in July in practice, that's a tall order. Notre Dame's got a lot of smart kids, but, man, can't you see it coming from a mile away? If all of a sudden you try to do what Texas did and that's not your MO, and all of a sudden the miscommunication and bang, 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 3 touchdowns happen because your kids are doing something they haven't done all year long. Notre Dame's got great defensive secondary players, and they play a lot of man-to-man. Now, is that a bad recipe for them against Ohio State? You would think. They get after the quarterback, and that's where it all starts and ends in football, as we know. If you put pressure on the quarterback and hit the quarterback regularly, alter throws, all that kind of thing, you got a good chance to win the game. And both of these teams do that very, very well. Lots of times to talk about that game. Casey, I don't know if we should spend more time. I kind of feel like, and you tell me, I feel like, we talk a little bit more about the Bengals and the defensive coordinator job than we do necessarily anything from over the weekend with the games, because I thought the games were a total snooze fest until last night. And it made me wonder about really the state of the NFL. Now, the ratings are going to say it was great because they're going to do great in the ratings. They always do. But when I look at this league right now, I think you've got about 3 or 4, maybe 5 good teams. And then you've got a lot of really mediocre average teams in this sport right now. You agree with that?
Yeah, I'll just do a quick thought on the NFL playoffs, because the one thing I kept thinking all the time I was watching it, especially on the AFC side, was, damn, I wish Joe Burrow was in this playoff, because I think he could have actually made at least one of those games interesting. At least they're going to put 28 points up. We had a team score 7, 12, and 14 points in the NFL playoff. Are you kidding me? Steelers look terrible. That organization, I think, is about to fall off a cliff if they don't figure it out here soon, if they haven't already fallen off a cliff. The Chargers, like I said a week ago, that organization, they just can't seem to get out of their own way in the big moments. Justin Herbert throwing 4 interceptions. That one, the field goal that was returned for 2, that's just ridiculous. And then the Broncos, they're a young organization. They're going to figure it out eventually. But, I mean, we knew what the Broncos were. I mean, the Bengals were able to hold them to, 2 or 3 points or something, 3 points in a half. Come on. We knew what the Bills were going to do to them. And the other thing, too, on the other side, Jaden Daniels, man, he just continues to impress me. I said it week 3 that dude was special, that he was going to be a dude in this league. And when he got the ball back with 4 minutes and 40 seconds or something like that, I knew the game was over. I knew he already had it in the bag. The dude is a blend of Lamar, but can really throw the ball with some touch. He's got some pocket quarterback sort of vibe with him that can really just cut you up in the run game too. That final run that he had proved it. I mean, he just
that's right.
Was able to avoid pressure, stiff-armed Kalijah Cansey, and was able to pick up the first down. Dude's special. But, man, all I could think of throughout the entire time watching these playoffs were if Joe Burrow was in this, it would be a whole lot more interesting. It'd be a whole lot more fun. And that's all you really can say as Bengals fans. What if? And that's the sad thing. That's the sad part is we weren't able to be in that position because of how much we struggled early on. And hopefully we can figure that out. Starts with the defensive coordinator. We've got some interesting names to talk about, Tom.
Any of them in particular, you know, I got to tell you, people forget because of the struggles he had as a head coach. But Eberflus is a great defensive coordinator. I mean, the guy knows what he's doing.
Yep.
He'd be a great hire. Saleh would be a great hire. Those are some of the more, the higher profile, bigger name guys. I suspect the Bengals will pay a coordinator. They may not pay him as much as somewhere else, but certainly you can make a great living. It'll be somebody that's making big cash. Who do you think when all of a sudden done gets that job?
Man, I don't know the exact. I couldn't tell you who they're gonna go for because I just don't know how much they're willing to spend. Because I think if they were willing to have an unlimited amount of money to spend on a guy, that they would go get the best guy. And if I think about the best guy available, it would be Saleh probably. I think Matt Eberflus is right there too, but I something tells me that they're probably gonna go with a lower level defensive coordinator. And when I say lower level, more unproven. I don't know if lower level is the right word. Whoever they get, I don't think out of all the names that have been linked to them, I will find some reason to be excited about them. There's a guy from the Patriots who's been bounced around the league a little bit, but he's really a defensive line guru. And that's what we need, right? That's a guy that I think his name's Robinson, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, then hire him as your defensive line coach.
Yeah, you could do that. Like I said about Matt Eberflus, I really like Matt Eberflus. The only reason he got that job in Chicago is what he did as a defensive coordinator in Indianapolis, and he really got those guys to play on a different level. You just look at the numbers when Matt Eberflus left Chicago and when he left Indianapolis, and they're not the same. I mean, it is a dramatic drop-off from a defensive standpoint. So I think that would be a great hire too. Not to say that the Bengals can't go wrong in who they could hire, but all the names that have been linked, like Eberflus, like the Patriots guy, the Raiders defensive coordinator, all those guys, I think that there's something that you can point to say, okay, that's the reason why we hired him. I think that's a good hire, and we can move forward and evaluate the talent that's on the team, because I think that's really.
Oh, Al Golden's got to be in that mix somewhere, doesn't he? I mean, he loved it here. In fact, he's never moved from here yet. A lot of people may not know this. I have a neighbor of mine that have been friends with the Goldens forever. That family, and they're still very close friends with the Goldens now. And he has kids in school here. And when he took the job at Notre Dame, he's basically been renting an apartment up there. He still has a house here in Cincinnati. So, look, while they're getting ready to pack everything up and go up there at the end of the school year, maybe you think about him and bringing him back. This guy's got a lot of experience.
Yeah, I wouldn't be disappointed in Al Golden either. I didn't throw him in that conversation yet because he's already said publicly that he's focused on winning a championship. So, I mean, when the season's done, I'm sure his name will get thrown into the ring too. I'm not sure. Does he have a buyout? I believe he might have a bit of a contract issue with Notre Dame. I think he's getting paid like a couple million to be the
Yeah,
defensive
yeah,
coordinator
those
for Notre
coordinators
Dame.
make big cash at the big college level. Yeah.
Yeah, so that might be an issue, but it would be that would be a name I would be also happy, acceptable with. He already has a pretty good track record, even with the Bengals. I mean, when he was here during the Super Bowl run, that was the best the linebackers have ever looked, and he was a linebackers coach. So must be some correlation between that and
Great
those
point
guys.
made by no name in the chat. Says, what defensive coordinator candidate will risk a 1 year job? Meaning, if Zach Taylor is fired at the end of this upcoming season, which if they have a bad year, he's gone.
Yeah.
I would think only someone willing to make the move, and it is a risky move. That's a legitimate point. Now, Elliott Fact Checker is coming in and saying Zach Taylor not getting fired. If the Bengals don't make the playoffs this year, if Zach Taylor's not fired, then everybody ought to cancel their season tickets to the Bengals because it would be Marvin Lewis 2.0. Now you can say, well, wait a minute, Zach Taylor took him to 2 FC championship games. He's won playoff games already. That's starting to get in the old news category. It's old news. It's 2 years in a row. They haven't even made the playoffs. So again, I'm not saying fire Zach Taylor. I never say that about anybody because I don't like that. I don't like when other people say it. I'm just saying if they don't make the playoffs this year, you now will have 6 years of Joe Burrow. And it would be a third straight year where you didn't make the playoffs. And it would be 4 years out of 6 years that you didn't make the playoffs with Burrow as your quarterback. Now you can say, well, he was injured 2 of those years. That would be true, as we know. But no coach, without winning a Super Bowl where you get a lot more rope, okay? No coach can have Joe Burrow as your starting quarterback, Casey, for 6 years and not make the playoffs more than twice.
No,
Can't happen.
I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. I think he would be right on the chopping block. I think he might even get fired midway through the season. I know the Bengals don't usually do
No,
that,
they'll never do it.
but
They won't do it.
if they start off slow again, they ended up going 4-8 again.
Yeah.
It would be really, you would find it very hard to not pull the trigger and see what you got in your defensive coordinator. Or maybe that's what the replacement for Lou Anarumo should be thinking about, is potentially having that opportunity to intern for the Bengals and getting that chance to possibly take over for a while and move on from there, possibly taking over as the Bengals head coach. But that's a lot of talk for the future. That is a good point from No Name, saying that it's risky to come here for 1 year, but I also think that there is some benefit to it too. The track record up to this point, a lot of the coordinators from the Bengals have had opportunities to interview for head coaching jobs. Now, Lou didn't get one, but he had a lot of opportunities to get one before, and we already know what happened with Brian Callahan. And the future for the other guys looks very bright as well, as long as they can keep winning. So, yeah, I mean, for the defensive coordinator, I do think that there's a good chance that, from what we've heard, the Matt Eberflus conversation, that being reported by national reporters like Ian Rappaport, I think there's some fire where there's smoke, right? When you get guys like that reporting something like that, it usually means that they're in the building, they're having conversations, and I wouldn't be upset with Eberflus. I think that would be a great hire. So
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, one thing you can't do is you can't let the guy's record or situation, the thing that happened as a head coach, you can't let that interfere with their ability to be a great coordinator, because that's how they got to be a head coach in the first place, is that they were a great coordinator, offense or defense. In Eberflus's case, defense. So, don't get all wrapped up in the stuff that happened with him as a head coach. Don't worry about that. He would be coming here to coach the defense. And look, I've said for years, I lived there. I used to have to do the pregame shows and postgame shows there. Chicago has become a graveyard for football players. I mean, it is so bad there. I don't know anymore if anybody can win there. And I don't know what it is. I can't put a finger on it. The stadium sucks. The field is brutal. It's brutal. Now, I know they're getting a new stadium, but the condition of the field year in and year out. We know the weather, brutal. Now, Green Bay has bad weather. But the Bears franchise is just a disaster. People always talk about the Cowboys. They haven't won a Super Bowl since Aikman and Emmett and Michael Irvin and those guys were running around. The Bears have not been to a Super Bowl since Jim McMahon was the quarterback and Mike Ditka was the head coach. That place is a graveyard for quarterbacks, for coaches, for general managers. It's brutal. I mean, it is absolutely brutal. Ownership. So I'm not going to, Eberflus did not do a great job. That's for sure. But that place is awful. Reed reminds me they did in 06, I beg your pardon, went to the Super Bowl and lost to the Colts. So Reed Mouse, thank you very much. I miss Reed. I miss my man, Reed Mouse. I love going back and forth with him. I miss him.
Here's the other thing.
See, one thing I want to, yeah.
The Bengals also did not re-sign their defensive assistant, their defensive quality control coach. So the guy that they bring in has to have a staff with him too. Like he's got to bring in lots of pieces, a D-line coach, the linebackers coach, I believe too, a defensive assistant, a quality coach, like that. There's a whole staff that he has to bring along with him. So you also got to keep that in mind too. And most of the time, guys at lower levels, like the D-line coach from the Raiders or the Patriots and the defensive coordinator or whatever from whoever, those guys aren't going to have a full staff with them. Eberflus, a head coach, probably has a whole staff that he can bring along with him.
The
Saleh,
other thing, Casey, is they got to hire an offensive line coach.
That too. Yeah, we haven't even touched that.
The Bengals have to hire an offensive line coach.
And there's no names that I've seen as of this moment that have been linked to the Bengals in terms of line coaches. Now, I don't know the best in the league.
Right.
I was told that Frank Pollock was one of the best line coaches in the league, and that didn't turn out so great here in Cincinnati. So I don't know how much it matters.
You know what? I got to tell you, Casey, I don't agree with that. I think that their offensive line, there are guys that got better. Their backups, Cody Ford, Zach Taylor went on and on at length about him. Now, granted, Burrow was getting hit too much. We all agree with that. But they were starting to break down physically on that offensive line at the end of the year. Brown was hurt. Mims was hurt. They had some guys injured. But, I mean, could they be better? Of course they could be better. Does Burrow need to get hit a lot less than he's been hit? Of course they do. But it's still an offense that scored in the top 4 in the league. This wasn't the Bears' offense. I mean, they still scored almost 28 points per game. So the offensive line can't be that bad. They can't be. They had a running back who would have rushed for 1,000 yards that he played the last game. So, I mean, you have a quarterback who throws for almost 5,000 yards. He throws for 40 touchdowns. You have one of the greatest wide receiver number seasons in the history of the league. You have a running back who did not become a regular until about the 8th game of the year, who rushes for nearly 1,000 yards. This offensive line was not that bad.
I mean,
all right.
They did have
hang on.
Go ahead.
Campbell won a Triple Crown.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, hold on a minute.
That was
and they had a left tackle that was playing on a broken leg.
Kappa winning the Triple Crown is a bad thing. It was the sacks, pressures, and
I know that. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But look, look, they weren't great. Okay, they weren't great. We all know that, but they weren't brutal to the fact that the team couldn't score points. Period. All right. One thing I do want to hit before we got out of here, and we only have about 3 minutes. Casey, I tell you, UC basketball, I am so frustrated with watching what is going on down there because I thought this team, and still believe this team has talent to be a lot better than they're playing right now.
Tom, I didn't want to say anything at the beginning because I myself am not a huge college basketball watcher. I'm not really a basketball watcher in general. But the only thing I could think of at the beginning of the year was, oh wow, this team's really high up in the rankings. What's different? The lineup didn't change at all. It had one guy different in the starting lineup, and I was like, how's that possible? This team was not that great last season. They're going to make leaps and bounds this year. Well, that's what they were expecting out of Wes Miller, was to get these guys to make leaps and bounds, to be better, to make improvements. And instead, they've completely taken steps back. They just look worse. They look like they've regressed. Guys can't even make shots anymore. Last year, you were saying, like, man, if they could just marginally improve one or two more threes here and bringing up the free throw shooting just a little bit. They've all taken steps back, and that is an indictment on the coaching staff. That's an indictment on Wes, and it's a shame because Cincinnati deserves better.
Yeah, I just for the life of me. Now, look, you know your shooter's got to make shots. Okay, when like I brought up earlier, when Lukosius makes one field goal and Jizzle James makes one field goal, there's a real good chance you're not going to beat anybody, much less Kansas. They score 15 points in the second half. We'll see if they can start getting it together. They beat Xavier, they beat Dayton early in the year. They now have lost their first 4 Big 12 games, and they'll play Colorado coming up. Okay, the fellas are standing by. They'll have a lot more to add. I asked you to say a little prayer for my wife. She's got a little procedure going on here in about an hour. Hopefully nothing major. But, Polly, I love you, and I'm going to be right there with you today, and I'm glad I'm here to be able to go. All of you have a great day today. Casey, great being with you. Luke and I and Casey will be back here on Thursday at high noon. We didn't even get our picks today, and it'll be better when Luke's here anyway to go through it. By the way, Casey, real quick, what's the spread and what are you picking tonight? Because we got to get this in before we go.
Tonight,
what is the spread?
The spread is 2.5 Minnesota. I am going to be picking the Rams in this one. I just feel like the Vikings are about to drop off a cliff. Could be wrong, but I like Matthew Stafford a lot. And he always seems to get his hat in the ring and mixing it up. So,
okay, so the Vikings are 2.5-point favorites on the road, and that game is Phoenix. Did I hear you right?
That's correct.
All right, I'm taking the Rams. Generally it comes down to quarterbacks. Darnold's had a great year. I'm not taking that away from him. But Stafford's been down this road before. It's a big break for Minnesota because it's not going to feel like a home game, that's for sure. But as we say adios, thank you to all of you in the chat for your thoughts and prayers for Polly, and she's going to be great, good Lord willing. And thoughts and prayers to not just the people out in California and their pets and all that kind of thing, and the animals and everything, but to a lot of people here in Cincinnati with the weather and all the snow and the cold. We pray for all to have some place warm to go today with lots of love every day. Casey, thank you. You guys have a great day. Here we go. Off the bench begins right now.